At 3:20 on a Friday afternoon, my mother walked into my cabin carrying a blue cleaning caddy and handed me a checklist. A family from Alabama was still loading their SUV in my driveway. I had never met them. Mom glanced at the clock and said, "The next guests arrive at 4, you need to move faster." My name is Kelsey Reed. I was 36, and the cabin was mine, with my name on the deed, the mortgage, the insurance, and every receipt for the 6 years I had spent rebuilding it. Yet my mother stood in my kitchen like a supervisor. She had sold my summer to strangers and expected me to scrub the evidence between bookings. On the counter sat a laminated booklet called Pine Ridge Retreat. Beneath the sink, face down behind a stack of paper towels, I found the cedar sign my father and I had made together. It held 3 rules in burned letters. Call before you come. Leave it better than you found it. Never give out the door code. Mom had replaced those rules with checkout times, pet fees, and a wireless password because she thought the sign was sentimental clutter. Within a few weeks, it would be lying on a table between my brother and the loan officer he had tried to impress with my property. What happened in that room ended every booking, every code, and every claim that family permission lasted forever. Before I explain how my parents became hosts of a cabin they did not own, tell me what you would have done at that kitchen counter. Would you have thrown everyone out, or would you have protected the innocent guests first? I still think about that choice, because it cost me more than I expected. I worked as a freight dispatcher for a regional grocery distributor outside Chattanooga, mostly solving problems before anyone in a store knew they existed. A broken refrigeration unit in Nashville. A driver stuck behind a wreck near Knoxville. A warehouse that had loaded peaches where the frozen meals should have gone. I liked the work because the rules were clear. When something went wrong, we traced the route and fixed it. The cabin sat outside Blue Ridge, Georgia, on 3 wooded acres above a narrow creek. It was not grand, with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a stone fireplace, and a porch that leaned slightly toward the trees. When I bought it, the kitchen floor dipped near the sink and rain came through the chimney cap. I used savings from a canceled wedding plan for the down payment, and the cabin became the first place that felt entirely chosen by me. My parents did not give me money for it. That detail mattered later. Dad gave me labor. Mom gave me opinions. My younger brother, Owen, gave me 3 promises to help and 1 afternoon of actual work, yet the cabin became a family project in the story my mother liked to tell. Dad's name was Ray. He had spent most of his life installing commercial flooring and could look at a crooked room and find the true line without measuring twice. During that first winter, he drove down from Dalton on Saturdays and helped me replace rotten boards, hang cabinets, and brace the porch. Those Saturdays with Dad were some of our best days, with sandwiches on overturned buckets and an old radio playing nearby. Mom's name was Linda, and she brought soup, chose the wall color, and told every visitor that the cabin had been our little rescue. She liked that phrase. It made her sound generous without requiring a number. If someone asked who bought the property, she said, "Kelsey found it, and we all brought it back." Owen was 26 then and had already tried 3 businesses. First came custom pressure washing, then mobile car detailing. Then a lawn service with a logo that cost more than his mower. Each venture started with Mom announcing that he had finally found his direction and ended with Dad quietly covering a payment. In our family, I was called practical. Owen was called creative. Practical meant I was expected to absorb inconvenience. Creative meant he was allowed to cause it. If Christmas dinner ran short, I picked up another ham. If Owen missed a bill, Mom explained the economy. I had stopped lending Owen money after his detailing business failed because he repaid only a small part and called the rest a loss we had shared. The cabin was the first large thing in my life that did not require a committee. I chose the pine cabinets. I chose the old green sofa. I decided which trees stayed and which ones came down. Every decision was small, but together they gave me a feeling I had not expected. I could build a life without asking whether it inconvenienced my family. Near the end of the renovation, Dad found a cedar plank in his garage and sanded it while I burned the house rules into the wood. The letters were imperfect. The word never tilted uphill. Dad ran his thumb over it and said, "Good." Folks remember rules better when a person made them. We hung the sign beside the back door. It was not decorative. My parents had a keypad code because I wanted them to enjoy the place when I was working. The rules made the arrangement simple. Call first, clean up. Do not share the code. For the first year, it worked. Mom and Dad came for 2 weekends. They sent pictures from the porch and left fresh coffee in the pantry. Once, Dad fixed a loose railing without telling me. I found the new screws and called to thank him. The first small breach came the next spring. I arrived on a Sunday and found 6 wine glasses in the dishwasher. Mom had brought her book club up for an afternoon without calling because, in her words, they did not stay overnight. I reminded her about the sign. She laughed and said, "Kelsey, I know your rules. These are women from church, not burglars." Dad stared at the porch floor. Owen asked whether there was any leftover cheese. The conversation ended because I let it end. That was my first mistake. I treated a clear boundary like a preference that needed better wording. I told myself Mom had been proud of the cabin. I told myself Dad had earned a few relaxed weekends after all his work. I did not ask why their comfort mattered more than my consent. A year later, Owen used the cabin for a fishing trip with 2 friends. He texted after they had already arrived. The message said, "Hope this is cool." I called him, and he promised they would leave the place spotless. They did not. There were muddy towels, a broken lamp, and a burn mark on the porch rail, but Owen said the lamp was cheap and the mark had probably been there. Mom sent me a replacement lamp from a discount store and acted as though the matter was closed. I changed the keypad code. Then Dad called. He said Mom was hurt and Owen had apologized in his own way. He reminded me that family should not need an appointment to sit in an empty house. I gave them the new code the next morning. That was my second mistake. I changed the number, but not the arrangement. They learned that any limit I set would last only until one of them sounded wounded. For the next 2 years, the cabin was mostly peaceful, and I went alone when I could, sleeping with the creek moving below the windows. Then work became brutal. Our company took over distribution for a new chain of stores across Tennessee and northern Georgia. For almost 3 months, every schedule changed twice before breakfast. I worked early mornings, late nights, and several weekends from my apartment. I did not visit the cabin from late February through the middle of May. I paid the bills automatically. When the electric charge doubled in March, I blamed a cold snap. When the water use rose in April, I assumed a toilet was running. Nora Bell, who owned the next cabin down the road, texted me a picture one Tuesday. It showed 3 cars near my porch. Her message said, "You hosting a reunion?" I assumed my parents were visiting, thanked Nora, and returned to work. That was my third mistake. It was also the last one I would make, before I finally looked at what my family had been doing in my absence. The Friday I came back was not planned. A carrier canceled a weekend run, and my manager told me to take the day before someone found another emergency. I packed groceries, left Chattanooga before noon, and pictured a quiet evening with the windows open. The first sign of trouble was a white SUV in the driveway. The second was a little boy carrying a pool noodle across my porch. We did not have a pool. A woman in a sun hat came through the back door holding one of my blue coffee mugs. She froze when she saw me. I froze when I saw her. Then she smiled carefully and asked, "Are you with housekeeping?" I said, "No, I own this cabin." Her face changed. She called for her husband. He came outside with his phone open to a reservation page. The listing showed my fireplace, my green sofa, my bedrooms, and a close photograph of the creek. The host was listed as Owen Reed. They had paid $1,460 for 4 nights. They had messages from Owen about check-in. They had a door code from Mom. They had done nothing wrong. The woman, Megan, kept apologizing anyway. Her parents were inside. Her 2 children had chosen beds. They were leaving the next morning, 1 day earlier than the reservation required, because they had a family event near Atlanta. I could have ordered them out. The deed gave me that power. Anger wanted me to use it, but the children were watching through the screen door and Megan looked close to tears. I told them they could stay that night. I asked them not to pay anything else. Then I photographed the reservation page and every message Owen had sent. Megan forwarded the full booking confirmation to my email. Inside, the cabin looked familiar and wrong. My framed trail map had been moved. Matching gray towels replaced the mismatched ones I liked. Small labels marked the light switches. A basket on the table held travel-size shampoo and a card asking guests to leave a 5-star review. The cedar sign was gone. In its place hung a polished plaque with the name Pine Ridge Retreat. The lettering was white and perfect. It looked like a business had swallowed my home. I found my sign beneath the sink. One corner was damp. A bottle of lemon cleaner had leaked against the word call. I wiped it with my sleeve and set it on the counter. That was when Mom came in with the blue caddy. She wore rubber gloves tucked into one pocket and carried a printed sheet on a clipboard. She did not look surprised to see me. She looked annoyed. "I thought you were working," she said. "I thought I owned an empty cabin." She glanced toward the living room where Megan was gathering toys. "Keep your voice down. They are good guests." I asked how many strangers had stayed there. Mom set the caddy beside the sink and avoided the question. She said the place had been sitting unused and the expenses never stopped. I asked again, "How many?" "Since March, maybe 9 groups. Owen has the calendar." 9 groups, in less than 3 months. I looked at the damp cedar sign and felt the room narrow around me. Mom started opening cabinets. "The next couple paid for early check-in. We need the beds stripped by 3:30. I brought clean sheets." That was the moment from the beginning. She handed me the checklist as if I had arrived for a shift. At the top, in Owen's logo, were the words owner turnover responsibilities. I read the phrase twice. "Whose responsibilities?" she sighed. "Do not make this ugly in front of people. You rented my property. We made use of it. You sold access to my home. It is a cabin, Kelsey. Do not call it your home only when you want to sound injured." Megan came into the kitchen and said she could leave sooner. I told her no. I told her to finish packing at her own pace. Then I asked Mom to step outside. On the porch, Mom folded her arms. I asked for the booking calendar, the earnings, and every login connected to the listing. She said Owen handled the technical side. I called him. He answered on the 4th ring with music in the background. When I said I was at the cabin, the music stopped. He told me to calm down. That was his first response. His second was that he had always planned to tell me after the summer. "After the summer?" I asked. "Once we knew it worked." "It worked for whom?" He said the cabin had brought in a little over $18,000 before expenses. The number landed harder than the word strangers. $18,000 had moved through my property without one notice reaching me. I asked where the money was. Owen said some covered supplies, platform fees, and cleaning. Mom called from beside me, "And the taxes?" I asked how much remained. Neither of them answered. Dad arrived 20 minutes later. He drove his old silver pickup and parked behind the guest SUV. He looked tired before he reached the porch. He did not deny anything. He said Mom had come up with the idea after hearing a woman at church talk about rental income. Owen needed steady cash flow for his landscaping company. The cabin was empty during my busiest season. They saw a solution. "A solution to what?" I asked. Dad rubbed the back of his neck. "Owen's trying to grow. He needs another truck and a commercial trailer." "So you opened my door. We thought we could help both of you." I pointed inside. "Show me where this helped me." Mom said they had paid the increased utilities. She had bought linens. Dad had repaired a loose step. She listed those things with the confidence of someone presenting a profit report. I asked whether they had paid my mortgage. No. My insurance? No. The property tax? No, they had not even told the insurance company that paying guests were staying there. Mom called that a technical detail. Dad looked away. Megan and her family left just after 3. I gave her my number and asked her to contact the booking platform. She hugged me before getting into the SUV. I had known her for less than 2 hours, yet she was the only person there who seemed ashamed. At 3:15, a message came through Owen's host account on Megan's phone. It asked whether the cabin was clean and ready for the next guest. Megan showed it to me through her open car window. I took a picture. Owen had known I was standing there. He still expected the turnover to happen. I told Mom there would be no next guest. She said the couple was already driving from Birmingham. They had paid in full. Canceling would damage Owen's rating and create penalties. I said, then Owen can explain why he rented a place he does not own. Mom's face hardened. They are celebrating an anniversary. You are really going to ruin that over paperwork? That was her favorite kind of pressure. She placed an innocent person between my boundary and her decision. If I enforced the rule, I became cruel. If I protected the stranger, Mom kept control. Dad asked whether we could honor the weekend and sort everything out on Monday. He said it would be decent. He promised there were no guests after that until the following Friday. I agreed. I wish I had not. I called the arriving couple myself, explained that there had been a mistake with the listing, and told them they could stay for the weekend. I changed nothing that afternoon because I did not want to strand them on the highway. Mom smiled as if we had reached a compromise. We had not. She had learned that a reservation could force my door open better than guilt ever had. I made all 3 of them sit at the kitchen table. The new guest booklet lay between us. I told Owen to cancel every future booking within 48 hours. I told Mom and Dad they were no longer allowed to enter without me. Dad nodded. Mom asked whether that included emergencies. I said yes, unless the cabin was on fire. Owen joined by video call. He leaned back in his truck and kept rubbing his jaw. He said canceling the summer would trigger thousands in refunds and platform fees. Refunds come from the money you collected, I said. He looked at Mom. Mom looked at Dad. That was when I understood the money was not sitting in an account waiting to be returned. Owen admitted he had used most of it. Some covered payroll during a slow month. Some went toward a deposit on a used commercial trailer. Nearly $6,000 had paid down balances on 2 business cards. I asked why rental money from my cabin had entered his business accounts. Owen said he was the manager. He had built the listing, answered messages, coordinated cleaners, and priced the weekends. You were not managing my property, I said. You were operating a business through it without my permission. Mom tapped the booklet. He did real work. Do not erase that. I looked at the polished pages. Owen had made check-in maps. Mom had written restaurant suggestions. Dad had stacked firewood. They had invested effort in crossing my boundary, and now they believed the effort created ownership. I repeated the deadline. 48 hours. Cancel the bookings. Send me the full ledger. Remove every photograph. Turn over every key. Mom said she would not make promises while I was emotional. I told her the deadline did not depend on her mood or mine. The anniversary couple arrived at 4:10. I met them in the driveway, told them enough to protect them, and gave them my number. I did not make the beds. Mom did. She carried the blue caddy inside without another word. Through the window, I watched her wipe a counter in the cabin she had rented and still act as though I was the one behaving badly. That night, I slept in Nora's guest room. I could not bear to stay 30 yards from people who believed they had booked privacy. Nora made tea and listened while I explained. When I finished, she said, "Those cars were not your parents'." I asked what she meant. She opened a folder of photographs on her phone. Since early March, she had seen cars nearly every weekend and several weekdays. She had assumed I had started renting the place and wondered why I had never mentioned it. There were more than 9 groups. There were at least 15. Nora also showed me a picture of Dad carrying boxes into the cabin on a Wednesday morning. Another showed Mom greeting guests with a basket. A third showed Owen photographing the porch with a wide lens. I asked Nora to send everything. She did. Then she touched my wrist and said, "Do not let them convince you this happened by accident." I did not sleep much. At dawn, I opened my laptop and searched for Pine Ridge Retreat. The listing appeared on 2 different rental platforms. The second listing had different dates, different prices, and a different host name. It called Owen a local property manager with years of experience. It also said the owner lived out of state and trusted him to handle every detail. The calendar showed bookings through Labor Day. Most weekends were full. One fall weekend had already been reserved for a small wedding party. The total value of the upcoming stays was more than $23,000. I stared at that number while birds started moving outside Nora's window. My parents had not made casual use of an empty cabin. They had built a season of obligations and attached every one of them to my front door. At 6:30 that morning, I reported both listings. I uploaded the deed, my driver's license, a utility bill, and pictures of the cabin. I explained that I had never authorized Owen or my parents to rent it. The first platform responded within an hour. It paused the listing while its trust team reviewed ownership. The second sent an automated message asking the host to answer the complaint. Owen called before I finished breakfast. "What did you do?" I told the truth. "You could have called me first." I did. "You had 48 hours. It has not been 12. I asked why I should wait while new guests could still book. He said the platforms would freeze his payouts. I said that was the point. Then he told me something he had not admitted at the cabin. The rental income was not only paying old bills, it was supporting an application for a business credit line. He wanted $180,000 to buy 2 trucks, a larger trailer, and equipment for commercial landscaping contracts. His bank had asked for recent statements and proof that his management income would continue. "What management income?" I asked. "The cabin. You do not manage the cabin. I have been managing it for months. Without an owner, you are not a manager. You are a man with a door code." He went silent. Then he said Mom had been right about me. I asked what she had said. That once you decide something is yours, you would rather let it sit empty than let the family benefit. I ended the call before I said something I could not take back. By 10, Mom had sent 11 messages. Some were practical, some were angry. One listed the money Dad had saved me during renovation by doing free labor. Another said family contributions did not disappear just because a deed had one name. I replied once. Dad's labor had been a gift, just as the weekends I had given them were a gift. A gift did not become a secret ownership share 6 years later. Mom wrote, "That is a cold way to count love." I saved the message. The first platform suspended the account that afternoon. The email said future reservations would be reviewed and guests would be contacted. It did not promise that every problem would vanish. It warned that unauthorized hosting could lead to charges against the host account. Owen called Dad. Dad called me. He said the platform was holding nearly $4,000 from completed stays. I asked whether Dad expected me to release it. He said he only wanted me to understand the consequences. "I understand them," I said. "Owen may lose money he made by renting my cabin." Dad exhaled like I had missed the point. "Your brother has employees, and I have a mortgage. He is trying to build something." So was I. That sentence stopped him for a moment. Then Mom took the phone from his hand and told me the next weekend booking had nowhere else to go. I reminded her that she had booked it. She said I was hiding behind ownership. I drove home Sunday night and changed every password connected to the cabin. I removed Mom as an emergency contact. I scheduled a locksmith for Tuesday and called my insurance agent Monday morning. The agent was direct. My policy was written for personal use. Repeated short-term rentals created a risk the company had not agreed to cover, and though no loss had been reported, the situation needed to stop immediately. That fact shook me. A kitchen fire, a fall from the porch, or a damaged vehicle could have become my problem before I even knew a guest's name. I called Mom and told her. She said guests signed waivers through the platform. I said a waiver was not a magic wall around my property. She replied, "Nothing happened." That became another repeated defense. Nothing happened. Nobody got hurt. The cabin was still standing. In my family, a risk did not count if I discovered it before the worst result. On Tuesday, the locksmith replaced the backdoor cylinder and reset the keypad. I chose a new code that only I knew. I also installed a camera facing the driveway. It did not record inside. It showed who arrived and when. Dad came while the locksmith was finishing. He stood beside his truck with an envelope in his hand. Inside was a printed ledger from Owen. The ledger listed 21 completed stays and gross booking income of $26,840. After platform fees, supplies, cleaning, and lodging taxes, Owen claimed the business had earned $19,200. There was a line called Owner Reserve. The amount was zero. I looked at Dad. Who did Owen think the owner was? Dad did not answer. He pointed to the expense section. Mom had been paid cleaning fees. Owen had paid himself management fees. Dad had been reimbursed for repairs and firewood. My property had paid everyone except me. The ledger also listed $600 for sign and branding. I thought of the cedar board beneath the sink, wet with cleaner. Dad said, "Your mother worked hard. She cleaned a place she had no right to rent. That does not mean the work was not real. No. It means the work was part of the violation." He flinched at the word. I did not soften it. I asked about upcoming bookings. The ledger did not include them. Dad said those payments had not all cleared. Some guests would receive refunds through the platforms. Others had booked directly after seeing the listing. Directly meant there was no platform to protect them. Mom had collected deposits by check and payment app, including $6,000 in full from the fall wedding party. I sat down on the porch step. "Where is that money?" Dad said some remained. He would not say how much. I asked for names and contact information for every direct guest. He said Mom wanted to handle those calls herself. "No," I said. "She lost the right to control the message." Dad's face tightened. "Do you want strangers thinking your parents are criminals? I want strangers to know they do not have a reservation at my cabin." He placed the ledger beside me and left. He did not hand over the contacts. The locksmith watched him drive away. Then he looked at the new lock and asked whether I wanted the old key destroyed. I said yes. The next morning, a couple from Kentucky arrived at 9. The camera alerted me while I was at work. I called Nora, then drove toward Blue Ridge with my manager's permission. The couple had a printed confirmation from Mom. They had paid her directly for a midweek stay. Their code no longer worked. They had coolers, hiking gear, and a dog in the back seat. Mom had not canceled them. She had not even warned them. I spoke to them through the camera first and asked them to wait. When I arrived, I showed my identification and explained. The husband was angry, but not at me. His wife started crying because the trip was for their 10th anniversary. I hated my parents for placing me in that driveway again. They were not present. They had collected the money and left me to hold the disappointment. I helped the couple find a nearby hotel with a vacancy. I did not pay for it. I gave them Mom's number, a copy of my ownership statement, and the information they needed for a payment dispute. That choice mattered. I could be helpful without accepting the bill. I could show compassion without turning their fraud into my debt. Mom called before the couple reached the highway. She said I had embarrassed her. You sent them to a locked door. I was going to call. They arrived at 9. I had a busy morning. I asked again for the direct guest list. She said she would give it to me after I agreed not to cancel the wedding party. The wedding party became her leverage. They had printed invitations with the cabin address. Their families were coming from several states. Mom said canceling would humiliate a bride I had never met. I told her the bride deserved the truth more than a fake promise. Mom's voice turned low. You always choose rules over people. No, I am choosing the people you keep using as shields. She hung up. The second platform suspended Owen's listing that afternoon. The email included copies of documents the host had submitted in response to my complaint. One was a utility bill with my name. Another was a page titled Property Management Authorization. My signature appeared at the bottom. I had not signed it. For several minutes, I simply looked at the page. The signature was close enough to pass at a glance. The long stroke in the K matched mine. The final loop in read was wrong. Then I recognized the source. 2 years earlier, Dad had helped me get a roof estimate, and I had signed the contractor's approval page and emailed it to him. Someone had lifted that signature and placed it on the management form. The document said Owen Reed could advertise, manage, and collect income from the property for 1 year with control of guest access and pricing. It also stated that I had reviewed the local obligations. Dad's name appeared as a witness. I called him first. He answered quietly. I asked whether he had signed the form. A long pause followed. Then he said, I witnessed what your mother told me you had agreed to. Did you see me sign it? No. Did you speak to me? No. Then what did you witness? He said nothing. I sent him the document. I sent it to Mom and Owen too. In a group message, I wrote that no one was to use my name, signature, address, or property for any purpose. I asked who created the page. Mom replied, This is being blown far out of proportion. Owen replied, The platform needed something uploaded. Dad did not reply. I asked Owen directly whether he copied my signature. He said Mom had handled the paperwork. Mom said Owen had prepared the file. They passed responsibility back and forth in less than 5 minutes. That was when the conflict changed. Until then, they could describe themselves as careless, entitled, or desperate. The copied signature removed the last soft explanation. They had known permission was missing, so they manufactured it. I called a property attorney in Blue Ridge named Dana Cole because her office handled ownership disputes and short-term rental issues. I sent the deed, the ledger, the platform emails, and the false authorization. Dana did not dramatize it. She said I owned the cabin. My family had no recorded interest. I could revoke all access, demand an accounting, notify the platforms and local tax office, and report the copied signature. She also warned me not to make promises to direct guests or accept money from them. That could blur responsibility. My parents and Owen had created those agreements. They needed to unwind them. I asked whether Dad's renovation work gave him a claim. Dana said years of gifted family labor and occasional use did not change the deed. The answer was simple. The emotional part was not. Dana drafted a letter demanding the full guest list, all booking records, all funds remaining, and written confirmation that the false authorization would never be used again. It gave them 3 business days. I sent it by email and certified mail. Then I called Mom. She said, You hired a lawyer against your own parents. I hired someone to protect a property my parents rented with a copied signature. You make us sound dangerous. You made yourselves dangerous to me. She began crying, not loud sobs, small, controlled breaths. She said Dad had worked on that cabin while his knees hurt. She said Owen was finally close to making his company stable. She said I had more security than any of them and still refused to share it. I almost apologized. The reflex rose before the thought. I had spent years calming her after decisions she made. Instead, I said, "Send the records." She stopped crying. "You really are going through with this?" "Yes." That was the first decision they could not talk me out of by sounding hurt. The records arrived late on the third day. They were incomplete. There were names, dates, and partial payment amounts, but several phone numbers were missing, and the wedding booking appeared only as family event. Dana told me not to chase every gap alone. We sent a second demand. We also notified the county office that handled lodging tax accounts. The account had been opened under Owen's business name using my cabin address. The county clerk sent me the registration file. It included the same false authorization. It also listed Owen as operator and emergency contact. The owner line held my real name. That detail made the fraud feel strangely personal. They had not erased me. They had used my identity exactly where it served them and removed my voice everywhere else. The clerk accepted my written statement and marked the registration disputed. She said the county would contact Owen about the account and taxes. She did not decide ownership. The deed already did that. 2 days later, Rachel Hall from Cedar Valley Credit Union called to ask whether I had authorized Owen's company to manage the cabin. I said no. She asked whether I had signed a 1-year management agreement. I said no again. Rachel told me she could not discuss Owen's application, but my name appeared on a document submitted as support. She emailed me the page after I confirmed my identity. It was the same form. This copy had one addition. Beneath my false signature, someone had typed that the agreement would renew automatically and that Owen expected to manage the property for at least 3 years. The lie had grown because the loan needed it to grow. Rachel asked whether I was willing to provide a written statement. I said yes. She sent a simple form confirming that I did not authorize the agreement or the use of my property in Owen's application. I printed it. I did not sign it yet. Part of me still wanted to give my family one final chance to withdraw the document themselves, and that hesitation became my next mistake. I called Owen and asked him to meet me at a diner in Dalton. Mom and Dad came with him, though I had not invited them. They took a booth before I arrived and left the outside seat for me, as if they were a committee waiting to review my behavior. I placed the unsigned credit union statement on the table. Owen recognized the logo. His face went pale. I told him to withdraw the false agreement and the loan application. I told Mom to refund every direct guest. I gave them until noon the next day. Owen stared at the paper. "If you sign that, I am done. If I sign it, the bank knows the document is false." Same result. Dad said the application was not final. Nobody had received loan money. He spoke as if stopping before the last step erased the steps already taken. Mom leaned toward me. "We can fix the paperwork. Sign a real agreement now. You can set limits." Their solution was for me to make the lie true after the fact. Owen pushed a folder across the table. Inside was a new management contract. It offered me 15% of future rental income. Owen would receive 20%. The rest would cover costs and support his business debt. I asked who had written it. Mom said a template service. The contract still gave Owen control of pricing, guests, and access. It allowed 30 days for either party to cancel. It also required me to honor current bookings. "You came prepared," I said. Mom answered, "We came ready to solve this." "No. You came ready to keep it." Owen said the cabin could gross more than $60,000 a year. He had researched seasonal rates. With better photos and a hot tub, it could earn more. He said the business credit line would pay for a hot tub and other improvements. That was the moment his real plan became clear. The cabin was not temporary help, but the first property in a management company he intended to build without owning one or securing consent. He showed me a page with projected revenue from 3 cabins. Mine was labeled flagship property. The other 2 did not exist yet. I looked at Dad. "You saw this?" Dad nodded. He said Owen had finally created a real plan. I asked whether a plan became real because it used something I had built. Dad said I was focusing on the wrong part. Mom touched the cedar sign, which I had brought in a cloth grocery bag. I had planned to show them what they removed. She ran one finger over the burned letters. "This thing made guests feel unwelcome," she said. I pulled it away from her. "They were not supposed to be guests." She said Owen's plaque looked professional. Dad said nothing. The sign had been a memory of work Dad and I did together. In that booth, it became evidence of the difference between us. I thought a shared project meant shared time. They thought it created a permanent claim. I told them I would sign the credit union statement at noon unless Owen withdrew everything first. I also said the family code was gone for good. Mom asked whether Dad would need permission to visit the porch he had repaired. "Yes," her mouth tightened. "That is not family." "No," I said, "what you did is not family." I left the diner before the food arrived. At 11:40 the next morning, Owen texted that he had contacted the credit union. He said the application was being revised. Mom sent screenshots of 3 refunds. Dad wrote that they were working through the list. At noon, I called Rachel. She said Owen had asked to remove the cabin income from his application, but the management agreement remained in the file because it had already been submitted. She still needed my statement. I should have signed then. Instead, I asked whether I could return it by Monday. Rachel said yes. I wanted the weekend to prove that my family had finally understood. It did the opposite. On Saturday morning, the driveway camera alerted me to a woman with a professional camera walking around the cabin and taking pictures. Owen was with her. He used a key on the small side door near the woodpile. I had replaced the main locks. I had forgotten that side door because it stuck in humid weather and we rarely opened it. I called Nora. She walked up the road while I watched through the camera. Owen saw her and told the photographer they had owner approval for updated marketing. Nora asked which owner. Owen said, "My sister. She is part of the new agreement." I heard every word through the camera microphone. I called him. He declined the call. I called Mom. She answered and said Owen was only documenting the condition for the bank. "What bank?" There was a pause. Mom said the credit union wanted to see the operation before deciding whether Owen could revise his application, so she had arranged a meeting at the cabin the following Saturday. She expected me to attend and confirm the management relationship. I gripped the phone so hard my hand hurt. I never agreed to that. You agreed to let him revise. I agreed to nothing. I gave him a chance to withdraw. She said Rachel would be there for less than an hour. Owen needed to show a working property, organized records, and a cooperative owner. Mom had already planned refreshments. Then she said, "We will need you to clean before they arrive." For a second, I could not speak. We had returned to the same demand, only larger. The first checklist had prepared my cabin for paying guests. This cleaning was meant to prepare their life for a lender. Mom mistook my silence for consideration. She said she would bring the blue caddy and fresh towels. She suggested we rehang the polished plaque because the cedar sign looked homemade. I said, "Do not enter my cabin again." She replied, "Then be there Saturday and open it yourself." I ended the call. The camera showed Owen and the photographer leaving 20 minutes later. He locked the side door behind him. I drove to Blue Ridge that afternoon and had the side lock replaced. I also removed the polished Pine Ridge retreat plaque. It had been screwed into the siding beside the back door. Behind it, the wood was lighter, a clean rectangle where the sun had not reached. I set the cedar sign against that pale shape. It covered most of it, but not all. The outline of the business remained around the rules. Nora came over with sandwiches. We sat on the porch while I told her about the credit union visit. She asked why I had not signed the statement, because I wanted them to stop on their own. Have they ever stopped on their own? The answer was no. They stopped when money ran out, when someone else absorbed the loss, or when a larger problem replaced the old one. I had mistaken pauses for change my whole life. That evening, Dad called without Mom. He said the bank meeting was Mom's idea. Owen had told her the application might survive if I confirmed that the signature problem was a misunderstanding. It was not a misunderstanding, I said. I know. Those 2 words were the first honest thing he had said since I found the listing. I asked why he had signed as a witness. Dad said Mom brought him the page in the kitchen. She told him I had approved the business but was too busy to handle documents. He knew he had not seen me sign. He signed anyway because Owen needed the form before the platform would release a holiday payout. Did you ask me? No. Why not? He was quiet for so long that I heard his television in the background. Finally, he said, because I thought you would say no. There it was, not confusion, not a family assumption. They had predicted my answer and removed me from the decision. Dad said he was sorry. The apology sounded exhausted, not complete. He wanted me to know he had not copied the signature. I told him witnessing it had made the copy useful. He asked me not to report him. I said I had not decided what formal steps I would take. Then he told me the full amount. Completed stays had brought in nearly $31,000 across both platforms and direct payments, with another $12,000 in upcoming bookings. After refunds and expenses, about $7,000 remained. Owen had used the rest. Mom and Dad had covered some refunds from their savings, but they could not cover the wedding booking without taking money from their home equity line. I asked why Mom had taken full payment months early. Dad said the bride offered it for a discount. Mom needed cash to keep Owen's bank balance high before he submitted statements, so the guests were not only customers. Their deposits were props inside a loan application. Dad said Owen had a chance at 2 commercial contracts if the credit line came through. He believed the business could repay everything by winter. I asked the simplest question. What happens if it cannot? Dad did not answer because we both knew. My family would bring the next shortage to me and call it shared responsibility. I told him I would be at the cabin Saturday. I did not tell him what I planned to do. On Monday morning, I signed Rachel's statement in front of a notary. I attached the deed, the platform suspension notices, the false authorization, and still images from the camera showing Owen entering after I revoked access. I emailed the packet to Rachel and copied Dana. Rachel confirmed receipt and said she would still attend the scheduled visit to verify the conflicting claims. Dana sent a final notice revoking every claimed permission and demanding the remaining records. It stated that no family member could enter, advertise, photograph, manage, or represent the cabin. I sent the wedding contact a separate letter after Mom finally provided her information. I expected anger. Instead, the bride called and cried from relief. She had started to suspect something was wrong. Mom kept changing the agreement and requesting extra payments for chairs, firewood, and early access. The bride's aunt had searched property records and noticed Owen did not own the cabin. I gave her the platform suspension, emails, and Dana's contact information. She filed a payment dispute against Mom. I did not offer the cabin. I did not pay for another venue. The bride said, "I am sorry they used my wedding to corner you." That sentence came from a stranger, yet it named the situation better than anyone in my family had. By Wednesday, all known guests had been contacted. The platforms handled their reservations. Direct guests pursued refunds from the people they had paid. My role was no longer to stand in the driveway and apologize for someone else's promise. Mom left 3 voicemails. In the first, she called me vindictive. In the second, she said the wedding dispute had frozen her payment account. In the third, she asked what time I would arrive Saturday to clean. I did not call back. Friday evening, I packed the cedar sign, the blue checklist, a small folder of documents, and an electric screwdriver. The checklist had stayed folded in my work bag since the first confrontation. At the bottom, under restock coffee and white porch rails, Mom had written one final instruction in blue ink. Ask Kelsey about fall dates. Even on the day I discovered the first guests, she had been planning the next season. I drove to Nora's after dark. She offered to come with me in the morning. I thanked her but said no. I wanted her nearby, not inside the conflict. Before bed, I checked the camera. Mom and Dad's vehicles were not there. Owen had not returned. The cabin sat dark beneath the trees. For the first time in weeks, I did not feel surprised by what my family might do next. I knew the demand. I knew the proof. I knew the decision. The only thing left was to say it where they had built the lie. Saturday morning, I reached the cabin at 8. I opened every window and made coffee for myself. I did not dust, change sheets, or arrange towels. The rooms were clean enough to tell the truth in. I rehung the cedar sign beside the back door. The old screw holes lined up. The pale rectangle from Owen's plaque showed around the edges, but I left it visible. At 9:15, Mom arrived with the blue cleaning caddy. Dad followed in his truck. Owen came last, wearing a button-down shirt I had never seen. Mom stepped onto the porch and stared at the sign. "We do not have time for this. We have time for exactly this." She walked past me with the caddy. I blocked the doorway. "Set it down outside. Kelsey, Rachel will be here in 40 minutes. I know. The bathroom needs checking. It is not a rental." Owen pushed his sunglasses onto his head. "Can we act like adults for one morning?" I looked at him. "Adults do not copy signatures." Dad said my name softly. I asked him for the side door key. He removed it from his ring and placed it in my palm. Mom watched him do it. "Ray, do not encourage this performance." He did not answer. Rachel arrived just before 10 in a gray sedan. She carried a slim laptop bag, not a stack of money or a promise. Owen greeted her too warmly and called the cabin his first managed property. I said, "Before we go inside, you should know that statement is false." Rachel looked from him to me. "I received your documents." Mom's eyes snapped toward me. "What documents?" We went into the kitchen. I placed the cedar sign's old replacement plaque on the table, along with the checklist Mom had handed me. Rachel opened her laptop. Owen opened a binder of bookings. He began his presentation anyway. He described occupancy, average rates, and plans for commercial accounts. He said the ownership issue had been a family communication error that was now resolved. I let him finish that sentence. Then I placed the deed beside his binder. "I am the sole owner. I never hired him. I never approved a listing. I never signed his agreement." Mom said, "She knew we used the cabin. I knew you visited. That is not permission to sell nights." Owen turned the management agreement toward me. "You were benefiting from repairs and maintenance." I placed the completed stay ledger beside it. Everyone was paid except the owner. Rachel asked Owen whether he had disclosed the dispute before the application was revised. He said he had explained that family paperwork was being updated. I opened the platform email showing my copied signature. "This is not outdated paperwork. It is a signature taken from a roofing form." Mom leaned forward. "No one stole anything. We used a signature we already had because the platform required a form." The room went still. Owen looked at her. Dad closed his eyes. Rachel asked, "Are you saying Kelsey Reed did not sign the authorization?" Mom realized what she had admitted. She tried to step backward from it. "I am saying she had given us general permission over the years." I pointed to the cedar sign by the door. My permission had 3 rules: call first, leave it better, never share the code. Mom said a handmade sign was not a contract. "No, the deed is the document. The sign was the courtesy." Owen pushed his chair back. "This loan is for a real company. People work for me. You are destroying jobs over a cabin you barely use." I felt the old pull to defend how often I visited. Then I understood that use was irrelevant. An empty room did not become available to the first relative willing to monetize it. "You built revenue on access you did not have," I said. "That is not my job to protect." Mom stepped between us. "He is your brother. This is what families do. The one with something extra helps the one who needs a start." I helped him before. Not enough. There it was, her whole belief in 2 words. Anything I gave became the new minimum. She pointed at the checklist. We cleaned, your father repaired things, Owen found guests, you are standing in a successful business and calling yourself a victim. I picked up the polished plaque. You did not share my cabin with the family. You turned my front door into Owen's income. Mom's face went red. And you would rather close that door than see him succeed. Yes, I said. I will close my own door when the only way he succeeds is by pretending it belongs to him. I slid the notarized statement toward Rachel. She already had the electronic copy, but I wanted the action to exist in the room. My signature at the bottom was real. This confirms that I never authorized the agreement, the listings, or the use of this property in the application. Rachel read the first page. Then she closed Owen's binder. The credit union cannot proceed on the basis presented, she said. The application will remain under review and the disputed documents will be handled through our process. Owen stared at me. You planned this. I prepared for you to tell the same lie again. Mom grabbed the blue caddy. We are leaving. When the refunds hit and his employees lose hours, remember that you chose this. I handed her the checklist instead. You chose it when you booked the first night. Dad remained at the table. He looked at the cedar sign, then at Rachel. I signed as a witness. Kelsey was not there. Mom said, Ray. He shook his head. She was not there. That did not repair what he had done. It did stop him from helping the lie one more time. Rachel made a note. Owen swore under his breath and walked outside. Mom followed him, still carrying the caddy. I turned to Dad. No more keys, no more codes, no visits unless I invite you. He nodded. If you contact guests, you tell the truth. You do not use my name to calm them. He nodded again. I removed Owen's plaque from the table and carried it to his truck. I placed it in the open bed. Then I shut the tailgate. When their vehicles disappeared down the gravel road, I locked the door. The click was ordinary. That was what made it final. The immediate consequences were not dramatic. The cabin did not vanish. Owen's company did not collapse that afternoon. The truth simply removed the property he had been counting as his. The credit union did not approve the line he wanted. The platforms closed his host accounts and returned what funds they still held to guests. Direct guests continued their disputes with Mom and Owen. Dana negotiated a written repayment agreement for the money that remained after valid guest expenses and refunds. I did not pay Owen's cards. I did not cover the wedding deposit. I did not buy his trailer to rescue him. Owen sold the commercial trailer he had purchased and reduced his crew. He kept the landscaping company smaller. That was painful for him, but it was his business consequence, not evidence that I had caused the original problem. Dad mailed me a letter 2 months later. He apologized without mentioning his knees, the porch, or everything he had done for me. It was the first apology from him that did not contain an invoice. I did not give him a code. We met for coffee once. I told him trust would be rebuilt by behavior, not access. He said he understood. I was not ready to decide whether he truly did. Mom sent one message near Thanksgiving. She wrote that the family felt broken. I replied that the family had been broken when they decided my no could be replaced with my signature. She did not answer. By spring, the last repayment arrived. I used part of it to repair the screw holes beside the back door. I did not make the siding perfect. A faint outline remained around the cedar sign. I kept it that way. The cabin is still not a rental. Friends come when I invite them. Nora has a standing offer to use the porch during storms, and she calls first every time. Sometimes I arrive after a hard week and find the rooms exactly as I left them. The green sofa is worn. The floor still dips near the sink. The creak still moves below the windows. The cedar sign hangs beside the door. The letters are uneven, and the word never still climbs uphill. I used to think it represented trust between family members. Now it represents something stronger. Permission can be generous. It can also end. If someone you love treated access like ownership, where would you draw the line? I learned mine was not at the edge of the property. It was at the first moment someone decided my answer did not matter.